Welcome back to Nigeria, the road to 2019. I'm Charles Aniegolu. So, you've heard the war of words between the aspirants and President Buhari. Well, take our advice and buckle up, because it's only going to get worse. Lots of manufactured political fights over the next 6 months or so as the country advances inexorably towards the 2019 poll. But beyond the profile-raising feuds that politicians of all shades seem to crave, what pathways to change and what pragmatic policies to ensure the actualization of that change are they offering the Nigerian people? Well, to help us break it all down, with me in the studio are Professor Jibo Ibrahim, Director of the Center for Democracy and Development here in Abuja, who is also the former Deputy Dean of Political Science at the Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria, Nigeria, and Professor Chudi Uwazuruike-Senior Fellow of the Institute for Governance and Leadership in Africa and former member of the Nigerian House of Reps. Thank you very much indeed to both of you. Just to get the Saraki thing, without sort of beating a dead horse to death, out of the way, he of course has had a running battle with the ruling APC, a party that he defected to from the PDP, but apparently has had a difficult time at the APC over the last 3 years and has now crossed back to the PDP.
Well, that's the normal pathway to power in this country. At each election, you switch parties depending on what the specific configuration.
You change horses in midstream, basically.
Yes, precisely, because unfortunately, as a country, we do have a tradition of blocking people from continuing, especially in the National Assembly. With each election, about 80% of members of the National Assembly do not come back. And it's been a problem for the National Assembly because it doesn't have sufficient ranking senators and members of the House of Representatives. So precisely because of that knowledge, they have learned to be nimble and prepare to move as soon as they see there are difficulties in front of them.
Right, that's a very good point. But in spite of that nimbleness, if I might put it that way, Mr. Saraki says he believes he has what it takes to secure inclusive growth for all Nigerians. How do you, Professor Uwazuruike, rate his chances? Are Nigerians going to be convinced by someone like Bukola Saraki?
Oh, why not? He's as credible as anybody else. You know, the reality is that you know, we're just at the very early stages of the game. This is the aspiration stage. You know, we first have to see who picks up the nomination form. We then have to see who has what kind of campaign. We look at who has what kind of endorsements. We see what kind of consultations they have made. We get a sense of their war chest or lack thereof. This is,
and of course, war chests exceedingly important.
Absolutely. This is going to be a dance of the giants, you know, in many ways. And one of the things that is just fascinating and frustrating is the number of presidential aspirants coming out on the PDP side.
Yes.
I don't know what number you have.
It's a pretty big field.
Yes,
isn't it?
you're talking of, I counted about 11 or 12 already.
12.
Okay, about 12. And whereas everything is also being tailor-made on the Buhari side, on the APC side, to including the seeming option, well, the direct primaries approach, you know, all tailored for the benefit of the incumbent, which also makes sense. If you have a winning horse, why
yes,
change
absolutely.
and so on? You know, but to the specific of your question, there's no question that a lot of this will be determined during the actual campaign. Very important. I just can't say enough. Piggybacking on what my colleague has said, that there is a Nigerian system emerging. And political scientists and political sociologists can tell you that we're seeing something new here. And I'm not as alarmed as most people. If this is the Nigerian system, let's rationalize it. Let's say this is the way elections, so long as it's democratic at the end of the day, so long as nobody blocks anybody, so long as people cast their mind this way. Because you have to understand that there are, as you know very well, there are different pockets of voters, and they're looking for different things. You know, the party officials, the masses, the farmer in the village. The interest of the rural people do not coincide with maybe that of the urbanized. The rural people need a philanthropist. They need somebody to really shepherd them, help them through difficulties, and so on and so forth. And they follow him. And that's just where it is at this material moment.
Right.
For those of us very familiar with the Tocqueville study of democracy in America and the whole range of that, this is an evolutionary path. You know, what we're seeing today is not what we saw in the 1960s. What is going on this year, 2018, may not be around 20 or 30 years.
So it's an evolving process.
It's an evolving as people become more middle class and so on.
Right.
So very clearly, a lot depends on what his message is. But let me just add this before we move on, which is simply that every candidate, Tambuwal, Atiku, Saraki, just the whole lot, they have to define in a word what it is they actually want.
Right, and that's really the key point, isn't it, Professor Jibo? President Buhari has already announced his intention to seek re-election next year. Many politicians have lined up to challenge him, but the president's problem is that many Nigerians are unhappy with the economy and the security situation, and that's created the platform for many of these politicians to launch their presidential ambition. But the question is, are any of these politicians actually putting out comprehensive manifestos detailing how they're going to deal with these problems beyond just representing what everyone already knows about Nigeria's economic and security problems?
I think some of them have been talking a lot about what they intend to do. Atiku has certainly been talking for a very long time about his plans as Nigeria's president. But I think a lot of the others are yet to come out to tell us why they think they should occupy the highest office in the land. And I think one of the things that will be a marker of these elections is that if you don't really have a clear message and a clear plan of action, then your chances are likely to be extremely limited. We've had a history in this country where people never really talk of their programs. I'm in the field of politics. I do know a lot of manifestos have their history in a consultancy. People are recruited to write a manifesto for somebody, which means that person who pays for a written manifesto has not really thought through why he wants office. The person knows they want office, but the reasons and the program for that office are yet to be spelled out. And what that meant also is that the person will have very little knowledge of their own manifesto. And I think this time, a lot of the discussions in civil society, but also in the media, is that we should be very exigent. We should demand from each of these people detailed discussions as well as debates on their platform, on their program, on their manifesto, so that we can, together as a nation, move towards issue-based politics rather than simply the politics of important, so-called important personalities.
That's a very interesting point. As you said, it's early days yet. I mean, we're kind of moving forward, and I think things will really take off when a presidential candidate emerges for the opposition, because we sort of know who's going to be the candidate for the ruling party. But at this stage, Professor Uwazuruike, are Nigerians excited by any of these politicians and their presidential ambitions, bearing in mind that these are mostly recycled politicians who are arguably responsible, at least in part, for many of Nigeria's problems in the first place?
Well, that's a trick one, you know, but a very important one, because I'm sure that between now and February next year, you know, right here, right in this studio, in your program, these issues will come up again and again. How are people receiving the news of the aspirants and potential candidates? I think Nigerians are ready for elections. It's been a very excruciating 4 years, very difficult for both the incumbent power elite as well as for the masses themselves. You know, and the beauty of democracy lies in this whole issue of the people getting to decide. Power belongs to the people, but also in the whole notion of term limits. Between the dagger of term limitation as well as the promise of a popular presidential term, for instance, lie the solution to the problem. If one can maintain, you know, the popularity and maintain services and probably pay attention to their own manifestos. Maybe they're going somewhere. Because really, in the African moment we're living right now, what we need are transformational leadership in many ways, more ways than one. And I think very clearly, people are just really eager to know what it is that they have to say. But I would say very clearly that the mantra of anti-corruption on the part of President Buhari remains his ace, as it were. And then the mantra of restructuring remains the mantra, remains the ace for
and those are really the two big positions
those are the two
that have
big
been
positions.
defined
Yes.
so far. Okay.
Continuity, anti-corruption, and then restructuring, because there are genuine grievances under each block, But also there are some younger elements who are really coming into the mix. Saraki we just mentioned, but also I have to mention Tambuwa, I have to mention Turaki, I have to mention quite a number of other people who bring a new perspective. I think the real fun in this particular cycle is to see how those younger elements will perform on the national scale.
All right. Gentlemen, Professor Chudi Uwazuruike and, of course, Professor Jibo Ibrahim, thank you very much indeed to both of you. Well, that's it for this edition of Nigeria, The Road to 2019. Join us again for a fresh edition tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.